Good afternoon, beautiful Black people. I hope you all are having a wonderful start to your week so far. Really hope that you're keeping up to speed with the reading, that you get started on those papers. Hope to see some rough drafts soon before we get to that deadline. And again, keep in mind, even when we go to the second half, how all this information ties in together. If you're behind on the reading, please get caught up to speed. For one, like I said, I think you'll find this stuff really interesting. And it's not only interesting when I talk about it, it's interesting because it's interesting. And it'll help you and the deeper we get into it, some of the material becomes more difficult to understand and comprehend if you don't really have the foundational things down. So when we talk about perceiving persons, for example, it's really important to understand the chapter on the self. That before, we can perceive anybody else. And what this chapter is focused on is when we interact and engage with other people, how do we perceive who they are? How do we interpret their actions and behaviors? The last chapter talked a lot about the self and, getting in tune with, who we are as people. But as human beings, we're going to have to deal with other human beings, and we're going to have thousands of multi-layered relationships within our families. We go after school, elementary, kindergarten, all that. We get into our jobs and our careers. We engage in different activities at our churches, at our schools, athletic teams, civic organizations. So being able to form good, healthy relationships is a really important aspect of adulthood. And quite frankly, I think it's really important in terms of being able to meet the challenges of modern American life. But a lot of times these processes are complicated by how we perceive one another. This is true on an individual level. It can be even more true in a group level. How we perceive of somebody that may be Jewish, how we perceive of somebody that may be homosexual, how we perceive of somebody that may be Black, how we perceive of somebody that may be Hispanic, and how we treat them based upon those perceptions. Those perceptions may be based on reality. Very, 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 very often, Latavia, they're based off very false notions. We want to look in this chapter at the 4 ways in which we come to perceive each other. Again, make sure that you're listening and taking notes on what's being communicated verbally by myself and your classmates, not just what's on the screen. What's on the screen, again, that's in your Cengage book that's available to you always. The notes alone will not give you understanding of the concepts and the material. And that's what we're aiming for here. And I think we've done a good job of that so far. So again, there are 4 ways that when we're interacting with another person, Ron, that we try and perceive who they are. We're going to break each of these down over the next couple of classes. The first is just the raw data of social perception, and we'll break each of these down in much more detail. This is just kind of a summary of these 4 categories. So the raw data of social perception. And that raw data is important. Again, you all are scientists, or budding young scientists. So in science, we have to use evidence or data. It's not enough just for us to say something. So I perceive that, Jakira is this way because all redheads like to have fun. Maybe she does, but I need a little bit more evidence than that, right? To be able to really, have a full perception of who she is. So the raw data of social perception. Who's probably going to have the most raw data about Jakira and know who she is? Who's going to have the most raw data? What individual?
Herself, right?
Great. Yeah, actually, great point. Yes, that's true. Who's going to have the second most?
Her significant other.
Say it again.
Her significant other or her parents?
Her mother. Yes, her mother. No, hell no. It's going to be all types of things she ain't finna never tell her boyfriend. I'm just kidding. I don't know them and they relate, but I'm just saying. And it's not always because, that, there are things that like are intentional. Amongst all of us, there are things that our parents will remember that we may have forgotten. So the raw data. So again, I was talking to my mother about this recently, about like literally like when I was coming like onto the planet, and if that said any, and what they may have said about my personality. So again, your mother, more times than not. And again, we talked about culture, and almost every culture, and American culture is certainly one, Latavia, where people spend most children spend more time with their mothers. Two-parent households, extended families. Maybe the grandma may have them beat in some cases. But the person that got to observe everything in as many different instances as possible. I've only observed Jakira in an academic setting. So my perceptions of her would obviously be very limited. Keep that in mind, because again, we often interact with people in very small settings and spaces, and we make really wide perceptions about who they are as people. We have to be very careful and mindful about that. We also want to look at how we explain and analyze behavior. Again, people are not just what they say, people are mainly what they do. But we have to, like, again, like, has any of you all, like, gotten into a fight before? Anybody?
Yes.
Very impressive. That's amazing, Ron. Jeez.
Yes.
Right. So that means that you're a violent person then, right?
No.
Right, Latavia?
No.
Of course not.
Right.
I'm the nicest person you'll ever meet.
Say it again.
I'm the nicest person you can ever meet.
Absolutely. When COVID ends and we get back into the classroom, we're gonna put that to the test. But like in all sincerity, like where we've all had moments, right, where we may have acted outside of our normal behavior, we may have had to be aggressive. So we want to look at how we explain and analyze that behavior. Did Latavia do that because she's mean and violent? Or is there something else that may have explained the behavior at the time? We got to be mindful of that, because a lot of times, again, we see a person's behavior and we make perceptions about that person based on that behavior. And now look, Latavia, if you engage in this behavior all the time, then we might, it might be fair for us to make some of these perceptions. But we want to be very mindful about looking at the situations, Maisha, in which the behavior occurs. That all of us have moments where, yes, we can be provoked to become violent or more aggressive. That does not necessarily mean that that's a consistent part of our personalities. We also want to look this chapter at how we integrate our observations into a coherent impression of other persons. Again, a coherent impression where, after a while, you can form a full impression of who this person is. Now, be mindful about this, Maisha, as we talked about last time. People are sizing you up from the jump. So you also have to be mindful, like, again, we're talking about, how people perceive Latavia. If you know that people are beginning to perceive you as a thug, Latavia, and that's not necessarily the image that you want to convey, you want to be mindful about there are things that you can do to control how people perceive you. You can control how people perceive you. Do y'all hear me? Now, that don't mean, like, Latavia, that, you should be caught up in what other people think. But if people think that you're a thug and you're not really that, it can have, like, some impressions on things. Like, Ron, if you're not really a hoe, but people perceive you as a hoe, that can have impact upon how you look. Oh, I was going to give a Ron, but he a hoe, girl. No. And Ron's like, no, but baby, no, that ain't like, nah, Ron, it's too late. We already know your perception. So again, you have to own and control your perception. It's very important. You might not really be crooked Hillary, Maisha, but if they turn on the news every 5 minutes and people's calling you crooked Hillary, such a thing can stick. So again, be very mindful, like, for corporate people. Like I talked about, people going into that with psychology degrees, and sometimes they go work for corporations. Sometimes they'll go work for rich and famous people, and there's a job in terms of just managing your public relations. Those kind of things are really important. That Tom Brady, oftentimes, Shakira, is not the one that's actually controlling his social media site. He will hire people to do these things to manage the public perception on social media. You all are aware that these kind of things exist, right? Again, there's a job now, social influencer. So keep these things in mind. 1 second, Ron. And then finally, we want to look at how our impressions can create a distorted picture of reality. That again, I'm sure we have all been guilty of making false impressions about people before, right? Some of my best friends, Latavia, in that first impression, I didn't like them cats. Fuck that dude, man. The fuck this dude think he is? My best friend, I ain't like Rolling at all. But that's my guy. So you have to be very mindful again about, first impressions. Try and get as much information as possible. Ron, you've been very patient.
When you just talk about, people control how others perceive them, right? You can control how others perceive you. Just to make that connection, that ties into what is it? Strategic self-presentation, right? Where you use strategies to shape how others see you, basically, right?
Absolutely.
Gotcha.
When you go into court, we're gonna take out them cornrows. We're gonna put you in a shirt and tie. We're gonna maybe cover up a couple of them neck tattoos. Do those neck tattoos mean that that you're more of a thug than somebody like Donald Trump? No, it don't.
No.
But you got to be mindful again of how perceptions again play a role. Because again, final point here, that ideally what we want humanity to do. What again, that the greatest role model in the world, Jesus Christ, will try and do, is to step in somebody else's shoes and see how they're perceiving the world. Most human beings fall very short of the Jesus Christ model and don't do that. So we often only perceive a person by looking at our perceptions. We don't try and walk in their shoes and think about how they're perceiving the world. Even in teaching a class like Intro to Corrections the other day, one of the challenges is being where people, again, I got criminal justice majors, but challenging them to think as if they're the person actually incarcerated and how that might affect how you treat those people. But to even get people to think in that way is very, very challenging. And it's challenging of human beings almost any level. When we talk about perceptions, again, that first thing that forms impression, particularly in a country like ours, which is very superficial, quite frankly, is your physical appearance. And particularly your face. Let me see if I have this slide in here. Sorry, just looking for something. No, it's not in here. It's a lot of slides in this chapter, y'all. Y'all ready? So a person's physical appearance. I'm gonna see if I can find what I was looking for real quick. Y'all still see the presentation, correct?
Yeah. It's not in presentation mode though, but we still see it.
Okay. Can you see the current slide?
A person's physical appearance, yeah.
Say it again.
I see a person's physical appearance. That's the slide that we see.
Okay, good. All right, give me 1 second. Keep in mind, right, we talked about before, although Freud, his theory of how we are sexualized into our gender definitely has some questionable components to it. We do still rely on his discovery of the subconscious mind, where so much of what we think and how we perceive of ourselves, how we perceive of others, how we perceive of the world that we live in is not at the immediate forefront of our mind. And again, racism in many ways, it's not, always a fully conscious thing. There are people who may have like Black friends, may have like, Black spouses that still have some subconscious racism. There are a whole bunch of Black people that got a lot of subconscious racism. And in our subconscious, we evaluate people's physical appearance very quickly. And whether for right or for wrong, we draw all types of conclusions based upon these traits. So again, keep in mind everything that we talk about here, Jakira McLeod, is based upon social scientific research. Scientific research, not opinions or isolated cases or anecdotal information. Research. And research has shown that, that a baby-faced adult such as Ron will be judged differently than a more mature-faced adult such as myself. That
I gotta throw something in there.
Yeah, absolutely.
You mentioned that, a baby-faced adult like me. That's definitely gonna be the case because I turned 21 in less than a month. And my mom's first plan was like, yo, let's go get a drink. And I know, because I've had this happen before. It's like, they don't they ask, I don't even order drinks, but it's like ID. And they look at me and it's like,
Right, absolutely.
You need ID, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, quite frankly, until I started getting y'all started giving me all this gray and stuff, that would be happening well into my 30s and stuff. I'm going to the liquor store or going out hey, can I see your ID? Like when I would be teaching sometimes, and on the first day, people wouldn't be believing I was a teacher. So it can have benefits, but also in terms of I think that one of the things that oftentimes in terms of police interaction with young Black males is that, if they have too much of an adult appearance, they almost treat them like such, even if they're 14 or 15, and are given a different benefit of the doubt than, some other children may be. But we also think that if somebody has certain type of features that it may belie a certain level of competency, again, if you ask people, hey, do you think that there's any difference? People will say on the survey, no, I don't think there's any difference. But there are things that we can do to measure your subconscious reactions as well. And there are a lot of studies within the text that kind of illustrate this point. But these are superficial cues. Again, facial appearances and things like that. But even though they are superficial, they can make long and hard, lasting impressions. So I was gonna show you where, again, 1 second here. So y'all can see the vampire woman on your screen. Now, the vampire woman, she may be a very nice, sweet, congenial lady. She may be a brilliant engineer or an accountant or a dentist. If she's, again, you're an oral surgeon, when you come in to to get a feeling of something, how you finna be feeling about this appointment? Again, she may be highly competent. Yeah. I'm sorry, go ahead, Ron.
Oh, I was just gonna say, again, that first glance, that first impression is like, well, then, what the fuck am I walking into?
You know what? My mouth feels a lot better. I'm gonna make an appointment for at the front desk. I'll holler back. And this is an extreme scenario, right? But what it speaks to is that for all of us, we got to be mindful about how our physical appearance may create a certain perception. And that don't mean that we always have to acquiesce to that. So Ron, I don't feel like this, for me, Dr. Muhammad's opinion, if you want to rock your cornrows, that should not have any bearing on what professional opportunities that you get. It shouldn't. What Dr. Muhammad believes should matter is Can you do the job or not? Are you competent? Are you skilled enough in this job? But people have had to make these considerations. Like I had a student, like when I was teaching in North Carolina State, he had locks, and he was going out. I want to say it may have been some engineering. It was a field that's very conservative. So if you go into the law for the legal profession, for example, is very conservative. People are not expected to really kind of present themselves in a way that stands out too much. You can't be like, now you got to be sharp as an attorney. Again, you cannot be going into court, Jakira, like, wearing suits that you got from Burlington Coat Factory. No offense to Burlington Coat Factory, I'm just saying. But like, something like, a white dude, like, with a long ponytail or something like that, that might not rock as well in that type of like setting. So you need to understand your profession. And what, again, if you're a police officer, they're going to expect you to be a lot more buttoned up and the like. So you do want to be mindful of these kind of things when you get into your own career, that these things do matter at times. But what I will hope matters most is how you actually perform in your profession. But again, people may, because, even if you're 40 years old, because you look too young, they may think that you're, may approach things a certain way. If you dress a certain way. The student I was telling you about, like, again, he came to me, Maisha was like, Dr. Muhammad, I'm about to graduate next month, and I know everybody is not really going to be as open-minded to my locks as as people have been here. What do you think I should do? And I was like, well, look, I mean, you've worked too hard and you made too many sacrifices, in my view, to be anything other than yourself. You do want to be mindful that, yes, there are going to be some companies that are going to, like, discriminate against you and look and kind of look down upon you in some way. And it wasn't like they was like pretty short. It wasn't like he was out there like, 2005 Busta Rhymes or something. So I didn't think it would like, make too big of a wave, but a few days later he came to class and he had like cut his hair. I was like, ugh. But I understand, like, I mean, again, unfortunately, although you should be able to come into that job interview and they're only looking at your resume, you do want to be mindful that sometimes, other things are going to be considered. And you want to think about, do you want to work at that type of company or not? But whatever the case, another aspect of perception is the situations themselves. So abnormal appearance can, like, create certain perceptions. How we behave in certain situations can also affect our perceptions or how we perceive other people. So we talked, Ron, in great detail in our principle of sociology about social norms. And these social norms invite social scripts, if you will. As always, when you see something in italics, studying it closely and preparing for the midterm or any pop quiz. We haven't had the pop quiz in here yet, have we? Oh man, it must be coming soon then. I will make sure I'm up to speed with the read, Latavia. That pop quiz could be coming at any time. So when you see something like this in italics on the screen, make sure that you study it closely. Don't just try and memorize. Try and make sure that you understand. And the notion of scripts is pretty simple. It's much like, again, like you would think about in a Hollywood script, that when we get in certain social situations that we've had again and again and again as part of America's norms, that we expect certain things to happen. One of the things that we're dealing with right now is that so many of our norms are being suspended. It's kind of hard to find our balance at times. But when you go to church, even if, again, like, that if Maisha, you grew up in a certain type of church where people worship in a certain type of way, and you go to like your boyfriend's church and, like, it's a little bit different than what you may have experienced in the Bible Belt, you understand that there may be some differences, but there are certain things that you're going to expect, normally. Somebody probably, again, there are going to be some readings from the Bible. Depending upon the type of church, they're going to sing some songs. It might be 2 or 3 songs. It might be 48 songs, depending on the church. In some churches, it's really common for people to get the Holy Ghost. In some churches, people are a lot more, demure with their worship. In some churches, somebody's going to bring out, you know, almost at some point, somebody's probably going to bring around a collection plate. Most people are probably going to be dressed pretty formally. There probably will be some people that, you know, just come as you are. And if we see things that deviate too much from our norms, it kind of is, you know, throws us out of whack. And if there's an individual that deviates, so again, if the norm of the church is everybody's kind of dressed to the hilt, and you see somebody come in there dressed like Ron, and again, nothing wrong with the way that you dress, Ron. But if you know that she was going to your girlfriend's church, you probably would know, okay, I'm probably not going to do that today. Even if it's accepted, or, you know, even if it's accepted within this space. And these scripts are important. I got you 1 second, Ms. Hayesworth, that it allows us to anticipate the goals, behaviors, and outcomes in a particular setting. When we go to job interviews, when you go to the barber shop, when you go to the hair salon, there are certain things that you expect to happen. Again, that whether it's a hair salon here in Miami, here in Columbia, whether it's a salon in Miami, a salon in New York, there are certain things that you expect to happen pretty routinely. And there may have been a situation where, like, you know, the stylist may have started doing something with your hair. It's like, wait a minute, what are you doing? Like, no, you're supposed to do such and such. Like, I know what's supposed to happen here. I've been getting this done since I was 4 years old. What's wrong with you? So we've all had situations like that. Maisha, what was your question or comment? Excuse me.
My question would, like, interactions with the police, like, would that kind of serve as a script for us? Like,
absolutely. Great example.
The talk that we have to have.
Great example. Yes. Excellent. Yes, that our parents at a very young age, they don't, it's not a matter of if you're going to come in contact with the police. It is, Maisha, so when the police stop you for being Black, probably. Sometimes they may stop you because you actually did something, but when they stop you for being Black, here's a script that I would like for you to follow. And you got to practice. So yeah, so my mama practiced being an officer. Like I told y'all before, she be wanting me to be like, yes, sir. No, sir. Like, now, nothing to be doing all that, ma. But yes, I know how to be respectful in every situation. Don't worry, ma, I'm good. But yes, absolutely, we'll practice those scripts. So, and again, knowing these social contexts is very important. Again, so the verbal and nonverbal behavior, Maisha. So not only, again, in terms of your verbal behavior and treating the officer with a certain level of respect, but nonverbal behavior. Put your hands where my eyes can see, Ron. Like one time we got stopped, and like, you know, we were actually out in the park and stuff, and they came and messed with us. And my boy Javon reached in his pocket for a second, and like, you know, an officer got out, and I'm looking at Javon like, dude, what are you doing? Like, it don't take nothing for these cats. Like, and this is in Chicago at the time. So these cats are scared to death of everybody in the street, man. So the nonverbal behavior, again, so like, you know, your posture, all those kind of things are important in terms of like, you know, communicating with the police, but also communicating with everyone. So some other examples of scripts. Again, different cultures have different scripts. This is really important. So in Bolivia, for example, and I'm not going to test you on any of these, so you don't need to write this down word for word unless you want to. But in Bolivia, it is an expectation, Latavia, that if you go over your Bolivian boyfriend's house for dinner, it's going to be expected that you clean your plate completely. Meaning that you got to eat all your food. If it's still food on your plate, then that's a nonverbal communication to that family. Ain't nobody trying to hear, Jakira, I'm full. And you better work that out, goddamn. You better finish this goddamn plate. So in that way, right, people, you know it'd be some people that be full, Ron, of course. People are people. But you don't want to be rude. That goes against the script. People are concerned about whether they're going to be perceived as rude or not, Latavia. It's real easy. Human beings say, well, fuck it. If I ain't hungry no more, I ain't hungry no more. I ain't finna eat. Nah. People say that all the time. We do all types of things every day, man, because we are very conscious adults, mature adults, are conscious of how they're being perceived. If you eat in an Indian home, conversely, I know it's a lot to keep up with, Jakira. You flying from Bolivia, you go to Argentina, you go to Spain. Now you're in India. Oh my God, what am I supposed to do? And I say this jokingly, but again, you all are definitely going to work amongst different cultures and probably work outside of the country. It's the 21st century. It's really important that you understand the cultures and customs of the people that you're working with. In Hispanic cultures, you know, there's like, and even in the South, this is gone away a little bit, but there's a culture of honor, meaning that you're not supposed to let any slight slide. That if there's a perception, Ron, that you might be soft or weak, that can have an impact upon how other people treat you. So when you say, like, you know, again, like I was shocked when you say like you hadn't had a fight before in New York. Again, that's amazing. You must be a really nice dude. A lot of times I didn't want to be fighting in Chicago. Sometimes I did, Maisha. But sometimes it would be necessary just to, like, you know, like when I got suspended in high school, my freshman year, Jakir, it was a fight to defend myself, but it was an important fight for other reasons as well. Because it let people know very clearly, Latavia, that if you want to bring it, you can, but you have to be sure. Because I'm not the one. Again, I was like about the 88th toughest person in my school. Don't get it twisted. I'm not saying I was the toughest, but I also had to let people know that I wasn't a fucking punk. And it's important to communicate those type of things in certain culture. In the Black culture, Chicago, yeah, that was important. People needed to understand that. Now, by the same token, if I'm trying to fight people all the time, Ron, that's going to create another perception as well. And people might try and pull it with me a lot more frequently because I'm such a tough hard rock. So you got to be mindful about those things as well. Ron, you've been very patient. We're going to get bumped out in a second. We'll log back in. But go ahead and close us out real quick, Ron.
Yeah. So again, I've never really been in a fight. I never really had to. You know, I was always that cool dude in New York. Now, when I came down here in middle school, right, for I think it was 8th grade, I did get suspended once for almost fighting with my homie, which is the crazy part. Like, it was some little shit, like, you know, I kicked dude, and like it was an accident though. Like, we sitting down, we doing work, my foot touched dude, so he kicked me back. So I kicked him back, and he, you know, it was like, you know, joking at first. Then I was like, you know, for lack of a better term, you know, I'll slap the shit out you, nigga. Don't do that. Like, and he like, do it. So again, I didn't do nothing. Wow. It was more like but apparently, you know, I guess he felt as if other people saw that. So then he got up and he mushed me publicly, like so it's like, damn, am I gonna sit here or am I gonna stand the fuck up? So I stood the fuck up, and it's like, all right, my nigga, you come on now. And I got we got suspended for, I mean, we didn't fight, but yeah, I still got, that was the one time I got suspended. That was the year.
Now, great example, like a mush is something small, and like, again, Maisha, is men, it's males. We know and understand that sometimes these things are really immature and stupid. It's like, you know, that was his boy, like, you know, like you're finna risk potentially, like, you know, getting in trouble, getting worse. Hell, they be trying to find reasons to lock young Black boys up for being aggressive in school. You know, so it's still, but it's like, you know, the perception of how other, you know, being mindful of how other people perceive certain things is important. And again, whether it be something, an aggressive situation like that, or even a first date, we all have ideas about how things are expected to go in certain social situations. Again, we talked about the perception of a physical appearance and things like that. We also want to look at how situations impact our behavior. So we're going to get bumped out in a minute. I'm going to, let me see, what time do I have here? I have 3:04 on my clock. We're going to log back in at 3:15 sharp. Here's what I want you all to do in the next 10 minutes, though. So we've been talking about scripts, Latavia. I want you to give me a script of what you would consider a normal, good first date. Now, I know that all of y'all are in love, but imagine that you get hooked up with somebody. One of your friends like, hey, Maisha, I know this dude. You should meet him, boom, 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 yada, yada, yada. Y'all are like, okay, cool. Y'all go out on the first date. I know millennials, y'all probably don't even go on dates no more. Y'all just message each other on Facebook and stuff, and then they be on and popping and stuff, and y'all get married, right? So work with me. Imagine that y'all going on a date. So describe in intricate detail, Latavia, how you would expect the first date to go. I want to see everything. You can, again, you're amongst adults. You can be as graphic as you need to be. Write this out. Although I hope it ain't getting too graphic on this first date, Ron, but I ain't gonna judge you either way. But write out the details again that you would consider a normal good first date. And then I'd like you to share your responses when we meet on the other side. We're going to log back in at 3:15 sharp using the exact same link. Is it clear what we're doing over these next 10 minutes? Okay, cool. I'll be interested and maybe somewhat frightened to hear what y'all will say on the other side. Peace.